Hi, boys and girls. Mrs. Louder here. I have a story for you today. It is a folk tale. A folk tale is a story that's been told for a long time and it's been told many times over. This one is called The Elves and the Shoemaker. Now, two elves secretly help a shoemaker create splendid shoes. That means they're really beautiful. The shoemaker and his wife prosper selling the shoes. When they discover that it has been the elves helping them, they want to repay their kindness. Those elves don't look like they have clothes on. Let's see what happens in this story. You know, folk tales have lessons in them too. This one has a lesson about kindness. Let's see that lesson. Now, look at the beautiful title page. The Elves and the Shoemaker. Retold and illustrated by Paul Galdon. It's based on Lucy Crane's translation from the German of the Brothers Grimm. The Grimm brothers are very famous storytellers. Now look at the pictures. Oh, we don't see a lot of people making shoes anymore. There once was a shoemaker who, through no fault of his own, became so poor that at last he had nothing left but just enough material to make one pair of shoes. He cut out the shoes at night so he could set to work on them the next morning. Look at that, he's only got enough left for one more pair. Because he had a good conscience, the shoemaker laid himself down in bed and fell asleep at once. There he is, asleep, and there's Mrs. Shoemaker. In the morning, after he had said his prayers, the shoemaker went into his shop. There he found the pair of shoes made and finished and standing on his table. He was very much astonished and could not tell what to think. What would you think? He took the shoes in his hand to examine them more carefully. They were so well made that every stitch was in the right place, just as if they had come from the hand of a master workman. Look at that, that's amazing. Soon a customer entered, and as the shoes fit him very well, he paid more than the usual price for them. Ooh, by his clothing, it looks like this happened a long time ago. I know the Brothers Grimm lived a long time ago. Now the shoemaker had enough money to buy material for 2 more pairs of shoes. He cut them out at night and intended to set to work on them the next morning with fresh spirit. But that was not to be, for when he got up, they were already finished. A customer bought them and gave the shoemaker so much money that he was able to buy enough material for 4 more pairs. Oh, look, the dog looks very happy too. Sometimes dogs like to chew on shoes. Early the next morning, he found the 4 pairs finished also. And so it always happened. Whatever the shoemaker cut out in the evening was finished by the morning, and soon he was making a very good living. One night, not long before Christmas, when the shoemaker had finished cutting out the shoes from the leather, he turned to his wife before he went to bed and said, "How would it be if we were to stay up tonight and see who it is who does this service?" Oh, let's see what they do. His wife agreed and set a candle to burn. Then they both hid in a corner of the room. They were behind some coats that were hanging up. They peeked out between the coats and began to watch. You know what they'll see. As soon as it was midnight, in came 2 neatly formed, naked little elves. They seated themselves at the shoemaker's table, took up the work that was already prepared, and began to stitch, pierce, and hammer the leather. The elves worked so cleverly and quickly with their little fingers that the shoemaker's eyes could scarcely follow them, so full of wonder was he. Look at them working. They look very happy to be working too. The elves never stopped until all the shoes were finished and were standing ready on the table. Then they jumped up and ran off. There they go. The next morning, the shoemaker's wife said to her husband, "Those elves have made us rich, and we ought to show them how grateful we are. With all their running about and nothing to cover them, they must be very cold." She smiled. "I'll tell you what. I will make little shirts, coats, waistcoats, and breeches for them, and knit each of them a pair of stockings, and you shall make them each a pair of shoes." I think they need that. I bet they would be very cold. Christmas is in the winter. The husband consented willingly, and that night, when everything was finished, they laid the gifts on the table instead of the cut-out leather. Then they hid themselves so that they could observe how the elves behaved when they saw their presents. Look at those cute little clothes. They look like doll clothes. At the stroke of midnight, the elves rushed in, ready to set to work. But when they found the neat little clothes made just for them, they stood a moment in surprise. And then they showed the greatest delight. That means they were very happy. Quickly they took up the pretty garments and slipped them on, singing, "What spruce and dandy boys are we, no longer cobblers we will be." Look how cute they are, and look at their cute little striped socks. They must have been very happy. They hopped and danced about, jumping over the chairs and tables, and at last they danced out the door. From that time on, the elves were never seen again, but the shoemaker and his wife prospered as long as they lived. And the message in this story is it feels good when you are kind to others and when others are kind to you. An act of kindness can change a person's life. And kindness is always repaid too. Boys and girls, I hope you remember that, and I hope you live that in your life.